Ted, Mr. Lennon, what's your full name, please?
Theodore Richard Lennon Jr.
Mm-hmm. And do I have permission to record this interview?
You do.
Where are your ancestors from?
I believe Germany, Scotland, Ireland, and England.
Where were you born?
Born in Santa Monica, California.
Which hospital?
I was born at Santa Monica Hospital. My other 12 brothers and sisters were born at St. John's.
Okay. Are you the oldest? Or?
I am the oldest.
Okay. How did you end up here in the Coachella Valley?
Well, I graduated as a civil engineer. I spent a couple of years as a civil engineer, and then I was a captain in the Army for 3 years. And after that, I got out. I decided to go into real estate, and I initially started out managing a large property management company of opening up new apartments all over Southern California. And then, and when I did that, I was working with Mr. Lowe, who started his company later on in '72. I think he started. And so we worked in the same company. I ran the property management, and he did all the development. And then we both broke off. I started a resort marketing company in Lake Tahoe, sold out a couple of projects, and Mr. Lowe started his company in '72. Asked me to come with him, and I did after 2 years in '74. So they talked me into coming down here. They had bought the Shadow Mountain Resort and Racket Club, and it was only about 60 rooms at the time. And so I became the general manager, the real estate broker, the developer, night auditor, bookkeeper, and we built about 128 units while I was there, and built another half a dozen tennis courts and so forth. So it was a major tennis resort, and I took up tennis when I got there and was very fortunate to get to play with a lot of great tennis players. And I did that for about 3 or 4 years, and then we decided I went on to develop the terraces of the Vintage Club, and that was a 2-3 year project. And then from there, Mr. Lowe and I thought we could do something at the higher end, so we developed the Reserve Club, which is both in Palm Desert and in Indian Wells, and that's been a wonderful project. And finished that like 25 years ago. That brought me to the desert. And I lived here for like 30 years, till about '04. I was actually a member of the Vintage Club for about 20 years, until we opened up the Reserve Club. And then since then I've kind of worked out of our corporate office, overseeing projects out here and starting new projects. And that's what brought me out here.
So what was your involvement with the Shadow Mountain now? Was that built?
Shadow Mountain was initially built. There was 40 studio condominium units and I think 18 hotel rooms, and maybe another dozen hotel rooms, small. And so basically I went in, I was the developer of it and the manager and salesperson, kind of everything to do with it. Mm-hmm. And that's where I got to know everybody in the city of Palm Desert. Mm-hmm. And we managed it for like 20 years, I think, and eventually sold it to the staff, and they're still there. To our employees, we sold it to them.
Now the golf club is separate from the.
Yeah, I was never involved with the golf club, and I understand a lady has taken that over, and I heard she's doing terrific things there, and I hope I get to meet her soon.
Yeah, okay, I'll make sure I know her. What is your special, you had a lot of duties for these places. You had sales, construction. What is it about your personality what is it that you key into the most?
I think I'm good at multitasking. Mm-hmm. I grew up doing my homework at college as an engineer around 12 younger brothers and sisters. Lived home all during my college life. And I just think I've always been kind of multitask, pretty good, maybe not the best mm-hmm. at one thing, but I usually can handle a lot of different problems at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I usually assume I can work them out, so I think that's probably a good attitude.
Yeah. And engineering, tell me, what was that skill that's hooked into real estate? How did that work?
Well, I decided to take civil engineering at the advice of doing research coming out of high school. I did fine in high school, and I was good in mathematics and anything common sense and so forth.
Right.
And I met a gentleman who was about a senior up at Loyola University. He was a civil I was very impressed with. And he just said, if you're good at mathematics and have good common sense, that'll be good education for you. And I met some older businessmen who thought either an economic degree or an engineering degree undergraduate was very strong. And so that's what I did. And that's how I became a civil. And I actually got a job out of a high school with the LA Bureau of Engineering, designing streets and highways and large, giant underground storm drain channels.
Gee.
And the frustration with that is anything you design is not going to be built for 5 or 6 years.
Right.
And so I got a little frustrating, and then the Vietnam War came along, and 2 of my younger brothers got drafted. I have 7 of the brothers, and 2 of them got drafted, and I had a deferment because I was a civil engineer. I didn't have to go in, but I felt kind of guilty, and I wasn't terribly excited doing the work I was doing. So I joined the Army and went in as a second lieutenant, was a captain 4 months later, and a first lieutenant 4 months later, and 6 months later I was a captain. And then I played on the All-Army volleyball team until they grabbed me and sent me to Vietnam. So that was an interesting career too. It's like, that's kind of my master's degree, was 3 years in the Army.
Right.
And the engineering I've got to use, I probably get to do more architectural work and more engineering work than most engineers do. I don't have to do all the dirty work, but I get to do the creative stuff. And you know, for instance, in the Palm Desert, Indian Wells area, I developed the giant storm drain channel that handles the equivalent of the Colorado River. So that was quite an engineering feat. And anyway, provided me with the good common sense, how to take things apart and approach it properly.
So let's see. So you came back. You've been to the Coachella Valley and back a little bit back and forth, right?
Well, I was here straight 30 years as my main home, from 74 to 04, and then I've been working out of the LA area since then. Coming back, I was overseeing Shadow Mountain. We did the Reserve Club, Stone Eagle, Desert Crossing Shopping Center,
Right.
the islands, the Neiman Marcus store, and all that retail and up sale. We did that. Did some other workout projects for other banks in Indian Wells and so forth. And so we worked on a lot of projects here.
But people ask you about the things that are visible, but you had a lot to do with the infrastructure, the storm drains and things that underlie all of these projects.
Well, that was mostly the storm drain stuff. When I was an engineer, that was in Los Angeles,
Oh, okay.
Beverly Hills, and that area and stuff. But out here, for instance, the Desert Crossing for shopping and the Gardens and El Paseo project, those were Amundsen properties. We managed the Amundsen properties, and so I got the entitlement approved for that project, and then negotiated. It used to be the redevelopment agency dollars, and the city agreed to pay for the parking lot at the retail project, and then we sold it to Madison Marquette, who then developed it out to a great project. In fact, the guy that developed it out is in the office next to me in our company now. So we're doing a lot of fun work.
Your company now is in Brentwood, is it?
We've been in Brentwood a long time, yeah. Our company's 50 years old. 51 years old.
You have a wife?
I do. My wife is Dr. Pamela Lennon. She's a clinical psychologist. And
In Los Angeles?
She's in Utah now.
Okay.
But she grew up here, and she mostly is specialized in kind of taking homes to a real high level. I don't know, Ralph Lauren design look. That's special.
Oh, you have something about what is this now about Ralph Lauren and the home in Utah?
Well, when you see a home my wife redoes, it looks like Ralph Lauren did it.
Oh, okay,
What I'm
that's
kind of
her.
saying.
Yeah, I know that. Well,
That's how you describe it.
I see. Let's see. When you were here, what was the desert like at the time when you lived here?
Obviously, there's been so much building, and there's always so much land, which is in the past has made it hard to develop hotels. Basically, you almost can't pay money for land for hotels to go ahead and develop them, and it's hard with the summer season and the utility bills and
Yeah.
failure to lack of
Right.
occupancy in the summertime and so forth. And restate your question. I kind of got off track.
What I was saying, you were here for a while, and what was the desert like then? And then we'll talk about
I'm sorry. Well, obviously it was much less dense.
Right.
El Paseo is maybe 40%, 50% developed,
Yeah.
which is a story we can talk about later. And I redid a historical film that's available at, I think, Historical Society, of kind of Coachella Valley at that time in the 70s, but I had the benefit of Cliff Henderson, the city's developer, of all his 16 millimeter films back from the 40s. And so I was able to piece together a film that showed what it was like when it was El Paseo was a street that had little signs that said your dress shop here, your drugstore here. That was, when he was first promoting it. And then showing the buildings that had gotten built since then.
So wait a minute, you're saying that Cliff Henderson gave you, or what you got these films that he had taken, and you spliced them and made a movie out of it or something?
Yeah, I did what was a VHS at the time, then went to a CD, and now it's on flash drive and so forth. So I gave it to the city.
Oh,
the Historical Society has it, and they've taken it and kind of broken it apart.
Are you happy with the way they did it? So?
That's okay. My intent was the city would kind of update it with the latest modern stuff to go with the old stuff.
So like
year.
side by side?
They just, you show one, then you show the street with the dress shop sign, then you'd show, Maestro's or whatever the great shop buildings are there. And that was my intent for it.
Do you know what they called that? Is there a name?
It was called From a Dream to Reality, I think it was called.
Okay, I'll look into it with the architect. The archivist.
I can maybe send you a copy of something.
Okay.
If you remind me.
Because that's important.
But Cliff was, obviously he was the founder and kind of creator of Plum Desert, and I got to be friends with him when he was, I think it started in his early 80s. Probably were friends for 4 or 5 years before he passed on. And his wife as well, and that's where I got to know him. He used to still hit tennis balls, and he was like 80, and I would go out and just hit balls with him and stuff. He really enjoyed that, and tell me all the old stories and what he knew as a developer. And he had all these stories in Los Angeles and the World War, being in Africa and the war and everything. And so he was a fun guy to get to talk to, very creative guy. And if you see the old films of putting the first shovel in the ground to do the Shadow Mountain pool, and having Edgar Bergen there and Candice Bergen sitting on her dad's lap, and some of the initial things that went on. They had the Olympic swim team there. They had Esther Williams at the opening, the big diving, the pool and everything. And so I have a lot of great fun memories of Shadow Mountain and all the history and involvement. We used to have the James Francisco Celebrity Tennis Tournament for 3 years. It was probably the biggest celebrity tennis tournament in the world at that time.
Is some of that on that?
I don't think so. That happened a little bit later. I don't think it's on there.
Do you have more of that in your possession? I'm thinking of maybe
just a couple of pictures, maybe.
Okay, I'm thinking of maybe resurrecting that because somebody has to take a project.
But we had Bobby Riggs, we had Vinnie Van Patten, we had Bill Cosby, we had Tarzan, we had Farrah Fawcett, we had the whole Love Boat cast. Dabney Coleman, he's a great tennis player.
This is a Shadow Mountain. Okay.
Yeah. It was a great event, very fun.
Was that several events you're mentioning, or?
I think we did it 3 years.
What was the name of that event like that?
The James Francisco Celebrity Tennis Tournament. He was a big TV star.
Right.
Had at least 2 major shows that were hits, and he lived in Hollywood.
Right.
It's fun. I got to go into Hollywood, and I think he had a court at his house. We'd play.
Yeah.
And then map out what he wanted to do with the tournament.
I see.
It was always fun.
So your emphasis at that point was tennis, not necessarily golf, but more tennis, is that?
Yeah, I didn't get into golf until late 30s when I went to the Vintage Club and started taking it. And there I had the benefit of getting to play with most of the major stars. We used to have the senior celebrity tournament there, the biggest one they had. And for 7, 8 years, I think. So there almost was no major golfer that was a senior that I didn't get to have the opportunity to play golf with. I mean, Palmer and Suchak and Ray Charles and you name it, I got to play with them. It's pretty special.
Oh, Ray Charles played golf?
Not Ray Charles. It's Charlie's a left-handed golfer.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, outside of the country clubs, what was it like, being in the desert? Was it, what was the community like? Did you raise a family here?
Yeah, my son Tyler was in one of the opening 2 years at Palm Desert High School, and he played football there. And so getting to see that new school get built, that was kind of exciting. And they had some, I remember a principal, I can't remember his name, but he was a really good guy, the initial guy. So I thought they got off to a good start. And so obviously there was just less of everything then. And you remember, like I say, El Paseo was some new building came in every year, if not 2 or 3. And 111, the things like Fred Waring, and it was kind of one way. You went Highway 111 or you went
right.
You went the freeway. That's how you got from east to west. And
like, where'd you go? Like grocery shopping or something like that?
Gosh, it seems like Jensen's was there then.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I always liked Jensen's. And I don't remember at that time. One thing I really remember that I thought was really special here was on 111. I think it was Portola 111. It was the Sunshine Meat, Fish, and Liquor Company. It was this great restaurant that was ahead of its time, and it had huge plants coming from the ceiling. Lots of plants and foliage, and all the help wore like white tennis shorts and Hawaiian shirts, and it was just. I think chicken dinner was $3.95. But it was a classy. It was a really nice place, and that was where you that's where you went every weekend. That was a big deal. And so anyway, that was special.
They had dinner early. Did they have dinner early in those days? Or?
I think they've always done that here. We've always had an older crowd. There's always a early bird special. I think that a lot of people live. And I always said if somebody was really smart here, between the freebie hors d'oeuvres at different places and the open houses and the grand opening, someone could almost live off of watching TV and for events.
Yeah.
But there's wonderful things, and you have youth here, and you have incredible sports, tennis and golf that draws all that, and you get a lot of senior people that are into sports, and so but you got to cater to everybody, and there's a few of the older crowd likes to stay up late, but most of them want to get to bed early, want to eat early, and so forth. So I've seen the restaurants adapt to that.
Yeah. How much does that play into things about developments and restaurants and businesses during the heat? During the heat, you just have to factor that in.
Well, we talked once before about people coming to live here and stuff.
Yeah.
And so the heat is. I think if someone's going to come move here, heat is. I enjoy the heat. My brother and I used to play tennis when it was over 100 degrees. We used to take a big buckets of ice water, and we did it. My son, he hated the heat. He just had it was a psychological thing. He couldn't wait to get out of here and stuff. And so I think if a couple's going to move here, if you're a couple, you better both like the heat or have the ability, like many people here do, to get out of the heat and go to the beach or go back east or go up north or whatever. So that the heat is an issue. And on the other hand, you're in air-conditioned houses, you're in air-conditioned cars, you're in air-conditioned malls. You can almost avoid the heat, but it's expensive, and that's kind of too bad.
You were involved in the mall itself, is that correct? You mentioned the mall?
The big mall here?
Yeah.
No. I remember when it got developed, and I think Ernie Hahn was the original developer. And no, I haven't been. We've looked at it since then to see one of our things our company does is we're active with like 3 major malls in the country to revamp them. It's kind of retail business it's not gone away, and it's going to come back when people. It's like people coming back to work in their office. It's nice being at home, but there's a lot of negative things about that, and you just can't. It's not the same as being one-on-one with a person. And I have so many Zoom calls now. It's just people have gotten the habit of having Zoom calls. So kind of. Anyway, it isn't the same.
Yeah.
And so I think more people. I think retail will come back. The good retail is going to last. Everybody's into experiences. Experiencing an online purchase is not very exciting, and especially when it comes back and it's the wrong size and you got to return it and so forth. there's a lot of good things about it, that you get things in a few days, that
Right.
small stuff that you don't have to go to the store. So I think that what you're going to see with the big malls is a reduction in the square footage of retail space, and they're going to take advantage of the giant parking space they have.
Mm-hmm.
And parking is always a killer for developments, is if you have to build structured parking or underground parking. So I think you're going to see a lot of housing built. I think they'd like to see that happen here in Palm Desert, where you get apartments and condominiums, and you almost create a new little village of itself with the good mall shops, the good restaurant, stay on there.
Yeah.
You can almost not have to leave it. There could be a laundry there. There could
Yeah.
be everything, haircut places and night space and everything. So that's something we're trying to do, is consolidate some of the malls into almost like a new little village, a special
Right.
place in the city. Like in the old days, you'd have a little village, with
Mm-hmm.
a soda shop and everything in one place, and then the big giants came in. So I think there will be a chance to bring that back, and hopefully that can happen at the Palm Desert site as well.
Yeah, when you go there, you have the experience of food, you have the experience of activity, of shopping, or many other things.
Yeah, it's got to be a happening place.
What kind of things do you read?
Do I read?
Uh-huh. What kind of period do you read?
I think I read all the Michener books. The Michener was incredible about
yeah?
the history of Poland, of Hawaii, how all these things happened. And they're tedious books to read, but they're so thick. But you can like read a part of it, put it away, and pick it up a month later and read it.
Yeah.
So I probably read all his books, and then I like the good kind of detective murder mysteries where they're in the locales that you know. So
Yeah.
there's a guy named there's a series called Harry Bosch.
Uh-huh.
It took place where I grew up, and the guys were hiding out in some places I hid, the pier, and restaurants my dad went to, and restaurants I went to. They're all still there, and so I
Like, did you go to Cheerio? Remember?
Cheerio.
Or the one you're talking about Santa Monica right
Yeah.
now, right? Yeah, because
Oh,
I lived
Cheerio.
down.
Yeah,
I lived down there early in the '70s. I lived
Remember
down.
Bess Eilers?
What is it?
Bess Eilers. It was on Wilshire Boulevard.
I'm not sure.
I
Yeah.
think in the 70s, my dad was the president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh yeah.
That's a side business, yeah. In fact, my father developed, with investing for Lawrence Welk, all the high-rise buildings at the foot of Ocean Avenue in Wilshire.
Yeah.
The big triangular building,
Yeah.
office building, and apartment stuff. So
Well, how was Lawrence Wilkin involved in those? Or
Yeah,
oh, he was.
yeah, he was kind of the major investor.
I see.
And my dad kicked it off, and they brought in some really good contractors and developer assistants and stuff.
Are you the only sibling that is in development, or I mean?
My brother Tony is one of the top salesmen at Bighorn Country Club. Been there a long time. Used to work for me at Shadow Mountain when we first started. My brother Jim has been in real estate and apartments, and he's done real well in the apartment business.
Yeah.
He has a twin brother who's a retired journeyman electrician.
Are you got twins in there?
We have twins, so yeah. Yeah, they're special.
Absolutely. So yeah, what were your father's occupation? What was
Well, my dad, he grew up in a family of 7 boys and a sister, and they all had 9 kids average. So we have a huge family. I think I have 220 blood relatives, not counting spouses, blood relatives.
Yeah.
And so he started out, always had 3 jobs. We had that many kids. I don't think people even had dental insurance back then. And so he always kept like 3 jobs. I would usually work one job at night with him, delivering papers, and every Christmas we'd rebuild bikes for people and all kinds of crazy projects. And at one time, I thought his best job, he drove I think it was a 54, 64 Chevy, the Corvette with the wire wheels in the front, that little sports car with Lucky Lager on the side. He was a distributor for Lucky Lager on the coast. And he'd pull up in front, and you'd think that was the greatest thing in the world.
Oh yeah.
But eventually he some people might recognize the Lennon sisters, and they were my cousins, first cousins. We lived a block apart. Their dad and my dad were brothers, and so because of that relationship, my dad and his brothers, they actually won what used to be like American Idol. It's called the Horace Height Amateur Hour.
Yeah.
It was like the biggest show on TV, and they won it as a quartet. And they were offered jobs to go all over, but they all had these big families. They didn't want to leave. It's hard to be a musician or a singer, so they didn't do that. And then, but a lot of the brothers went on to be kind of famous, fight announcers and Hall of Famers and so forth. And so my dad got hired by Welk. Lawrence Welk started a second national TV show of the best youth musicians and singers in the United States. It's very unusual.
Yeah.
He did it for 2 or 3 years. And my dad's job was to go to like Stanford and UCLA and Harvard or wherever these great musicians and players were and find the talent and then put them on the show. And so we'd have these characters coming back, and they'd stay at our house for a couple of days so they'd get an apartment and so forth. So he was doing really good, and at the end of all of a sudden Lawrence said, I'm exhausted. I'm doing 2 national TV shows, and I go on tour every year. I got to drop this show. So my dad thought he was out of a job, and kind of fun story. Lawrence called him in and said, Ted, I want you to be my business manager. I got like, I want to say like $50,000 in the bank, and I'm not managing it and so forth. And my dad said, well, I don't have that background for that. He said, you're the first guy to work, the last guy to leave, you're the most liked, and you're the hardest worker I've ever had working for me. You're my business manager. So 35 years later, I think Lawrence had 150 or 200 million in the bank.
Yeah.
And that family, the Larry Weck Jr., who I went to school with, and some of the other kids who were friends of my younger brothers, they've expanded that business now, and really good stuff. So
he identified, Mr. Wilk identified developing as his. How did that? How did he identify?
My dad did.
Yeah.
It was really just investing the money. So Lawrence was in Kansas Oil. He was in thoroughbred horse breeding, very fast. My dad did all that, and then we did development deals. He did developments in Nashville, and San Diego, and Santa Monica, and then on the ocean in Santa Monica. So Lawrence was a great guy, and we all spent a lot of time with him. And when I was a senior in high school, getting off track a little bit, but when I was a senior in high school, my dad said the big Beverly Hills fire was going on. And he lived north of Sunset on Tiger Tail, one of the famous streets. He said, once you go stay with Lawrence, he's there by himself, and the houses are burning around there. So I go up, and I'm like 16, and so Lawrence, he's trying to entertain me, and he says, would you like a beer, young man? So he said, I think I have some beer down in the cellar. And he had this beer from Miller High Life, and it had settled to the bottom of all the beer bottles.
So old.
It was so old. But then he said, I got frozen steaks down there, and he had these huge steaks from Omaha they were sending in. So we barbecue steaks, and then he had a putting course in his backyard. So at midnight, these houses, the whole metals are on the thing. He had a barrel tile roof, so I think he felt fairly safe. But in that same night, I would walk up Tiger Tail, I'd pick up a fire hose that wasn't being used, and I'd squirt it. Nobody's there. The church couldn't get in. Every third house was on fire on both sides of the street, all the way up. And anyway.
His survived.
Huh?
His was okay.
Yeah, a lot of houses were like that. It's just like you had a tile roof, and you have something where the embers could get started and so forth. And anyway, that was an experience. But Lawrence Welk was great, and we spent a lot of time with him. He was a funny guy. He was a great guy.
What was he, a jack of all trades?
He loved the desert, loved golf, loved being out here.
What about growth spurts? I mean, when you used to go on El Paseo, are you surprised the way it developed, or are you happy?
Not really. In a sense, now it looks okay, but it was always a little bit too long, so it never looked completed because there's always empty land left.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the deal. It was like too long a street, and if you kind of go down it now, it kind of changes once in a while. It's like on the east end,
right?
It's gotten more artsy and the sculpture stuff. That was a nice pickup. And then, actually, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago, with 5 other guys, I started Palm Desert National Bank. We were the original founders and stuck with it about 12 years. And then we sold it to a family that took it over, and then they sold it to Pacific Premier Bank. So I still bank there, so I've got a banking account. My main banking account has been in town for 50 years, I think. And so that was fun, being in the banking business locally in Palm Desert. And it's just a common sense business.
Is it?
And
well, I could tell right away. I mean,
Yeah.
some people just, you have common sense. That can't be taught. You either have it or you don't.
yeah, there's some logic. I think, I think in my life, I think the one thing I learned is you can't ever burn a bridge. It's going to come back and haunt you.
Yeah,
It's
a good
like
one.
the OJ case, or sometime you're going to come back up and there's a city councilman up there that you yelled at or
That is true.
did something stupid with. He was your neighbor, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I don't have many bridges I've done,
Oh, that's a
but
good one.
I'm conscious about that, because what goes around comes around.
A lot of people say this that the desert is not as windy as it was. Do you, because of all the construction going around? I don't know. Do you notice
Well,
anything?
Yeah, I would think in certain areas there's huge buildings and malls and stuff that block the wind off. You just have a flat desert. It's a different animal.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got golf courses that have created undulating landscape and so forth. So I don't know. The heat seemed like we had a really hot summer, and I thought the fascinating thing about the COVID experience for the heat was people who had never eaten outside in summer learned to eat outside, appreciate how good it was to be in the outdoors, even in that heat. And so I think you're going to see a lot, and people who came out to the desert in that summer and just being able to be out in the open, I think that you learn, I remember when I lived here, I used to think it was either too cold at night or it was too hot to go outside and eat. But now you just go out no matter what, and you put a sweater on or a jacket.
You adapt
and you do that. Yeah.
What restaurants do you like to go to currently?
Well, I go to Keaty's for breakfast.
Oh, you do?
I like Corso's on Palm Desert. That's a John Westman restaurant. He was a friend of mine a long time. And which we have a Pietro.
Oh yeah.
The one, the $6 dinner they did, the evening thing. I thought that was a fun thing. What is it? Mama Gina's.
Oh, Mama
Right?
Gina's. What about, okay, let's go to the reserve now. Okay, now let's segue back into that now.
So I was on site there for about 5 or 6 years, and then joined the Vintage Club, and was a member there, and I watched what they were doing. And most people don't know, but Vintage was originally designed to be like 1,200 units, all high rises. That was the original concept, and that's kind of why the 90,000 square foot clubhouse got built, because they thought they were going to have this huge membership. And then when they first went in, so I bought one of the first lots, and I actually put a reservation on 3 or 4 more, and because I knew they were only doing 30 lots, I thought, man, that's going to be a winner. And then they started calling me, oh, we got to get a lot back, we got to sell one to so and so. So I mean, I knew they had one piece of ground that they were having trouble getting off the ground, and most people, I think they faced like a prime rate of like 14% during the life of that project. It's hard to make money when that happens, and so.
Who was the developer of it?
Nick Humphreys,
Okay.
he's a great guy, and Joe Steiger. They were partners, and they had done a big project. They were from San Francisco area. They'd done a Foster City, a very successful development. They were young guys, and Nick was a good golfer, and so they started out. So anyway, I was the first guy that was able to that he ever sold land to. He was kind of, so we bought acreage, and I did the terraces there, which is 57 luxury units, and all the top floor penthouses, and they all have skylights as big as your ceiling. The ceilings roll back, and so that's what we did. That was the next project, and then from there we kind of thought we had. And I was a member of Vintage 20 years, and I watched it go from 200 members to 500 members, and it's just different. You don't know everybody then. You don't.
Yeah.
It was a little different. So I thought if I could do my intent with the reserve was to have a little lower density. We had the same amount of acreage they did, but we limited it to 250 residences and kind of memberships.
So what kind of acreage was that per? What kind of lot size was that per building?
Well, for the project, you got, you're 250 units on 700 acres, so It was
I
like
see.
3 acres for building
Wow.
for the whole project.
I didn't realize
But the lot
that.
sizes were all different sizes. You know, a lot of open space,
Okay.
golf developed, and everything else. So we thought we understood the high-end market, and we went and did the reserve. We fortunately caught the economy at a good time.
Good.
We had a lot of people don't know, but our original investor, one of our original investors was Bill Gates. And he had a 0.25% or something on the deal, and we had 0.25% in a New York hedge fund, and we just had everything went terrific. You know, we sold out in like 2 years, and when it was supposed to take 7 years to sell out, we were able to raise
Wow.
prices. And like I told you, tomorrow I'm going to go meet. We're having a
Yeah.
25-year anniversary of that project. And like I say, it was in 2 cities, and that always have been competitive with each other. And so when I first met with each city, they said, well, tell the other city to annex, they'll give us the property, we'll okay it. That's how I started. And then I basically just went from Living Desert to Ironwood Country Club to the University of Cal's Ecological Reserve to the Bureau of Land Management to the Sierra Club. I just kept doing the route of all my
Yeah.
neighbors,
Yeah.
asking what's the problem. Oh, what if I did this? Oh, you do that? You know, so it
I
was.
see. Ooh.
So it was what was unusual about it to be in 2 cities. I think I went to 2 planning commissions in Palm Desert and 1 city hall to get this project approved, and only 1 city hall and 1 planning commission in Indian Wells. So like this very critical project, you know, and
Right.
raw land, and I had to after the 40 square miles of steep mountains all drained right through the project.
Yeah.
So I had to design a complete drainage system for that. So it's just been a wonderful project. It still gives back, and
Really?
we're still proud to go there, and everybody agrees. And
What about the clubhouses? You have how many clubhouses?
they just remodeled the clubhouse 2 years later. Kind of did things I wish I'd have done, and just little things.
Like what?
Instead of wood frame windows, they're all old steel frame now, and it's just something you do when you're all of a sudden, God, we can't afford that. It's under $50,000.
Right.
And then you look back, and so they've done some wonderful stuff in the remodel, just to open it up more. But the
Right.
setting, never would have changed the setting where it was. It's beautiful. It's a rare project. You can see all 3 snow-covered mountain ranges: San Gorgonio, San Jacinto, Santa Rosa's.
Wow.
From the project. It has a nice 5% slope, so you see all the way down valley.
Right.
And it just turned out great. We did a natural landscape throughout the project that's won over a lot of people who didn't think they liked the desert. That was a good, very positive. But you know, when you're in the business as long as I have, you got to go through a lot of depressions and Iraq wars, and no gas available. That shut things down. I've had a great, fun career.
That's
And
wonderful.
I work with a great company, and
What is something about the desert that would surprise people? Like people don't think
I
something.
think the probably they haven't been here. There's a lot of international talent comes here. The entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
and the Indian casinos have brought a huge entertainment level from the casinos, and I think it surprises people. They can go up the tram to be in the snow the same day. It's 100 degrees down below, and then the trails we've created. I don't know if you know, but I helped start the Friends of Desert
I
Mountains.
was going to ask you about that.
And so not only we set aside land, but we've helped create the trails, and we monitor a lot of them. We create the signing for them, and we encourage volunteers and training people how to hike. So I think the hiking is terrific here. The bicycle riding is great. One of my goals, and I didn't able to achieve it, was to be able to ride through the Whitewater Channel from Palm Springs back to Indian Wells or all the way to La Quinta. It seems ridiculous. They can't do that. At one time, I wanted to take over the Salton Sea job. They've had some interesting guys in charge of it, but it takes, you got to have political insight, you got to have engineering technology, you got to have
I read a lot about it.
funding, and
Do you think it's possible to, you think that, what's the probability out there that you see?
it'll probably be, I don't know if I read something the other day when the Colorado River flooded and it filled it up, kind of created it, and it's going to take some kind of another disaster, and they're saying what could happen is the water goes down and the selenium all goes up into the air.
Yeah.
So it might be an environmental disaster that just makes people go in and do it.
So it'd be some kind of event, crisis event.
And I remember even before I came out here, my dad and I bought a lot there.
Really?
It's a lot of stuff, and you know they dump stuff in from Mexico that comes in from the south end of it.
So do you have a residence here in the desert now, or not really?
No, I've been. My brother has a place here that I stay sometimes, and I've been talking about buying another place, and then we have the Miramani Hotel now, so I stay there whenever I come out.
Did you know any of the founders of Palm Desert, the city of Palm Desert?
Well, Cliff Henderson being the main guy.
What about his brother? What about it?
I'm trying to remember his name. Cliff and
I think it started with an L. But I don't
I
think they got along.
met him a couple. No. One was kind of. No, they were. They didn't get along good. And but the one guy was kind of a little more environmental, more. I didn't know him enough to speak about stuff. A lot of people thought he was terrific, and he was a good guy.
Well, you said when you met Cliff, he was older at that time.
Oh yeah,
right?
he was at least in his late 70s. He was
is that right?
80s, and he lived over on the Shadow Mountain Golf Course and stuff. But yeah, his stories were awesome, and I think he developed the Pan Pacific Auditorium in
that is true. Yeah, I remember.
And I used to hear those stories, and so him, and then I think there was a Walter Clarkson was a big player originally. I mean, Dick Kelly. Yeah. And now his daughter's on the board.
Yeah, Kathleen.
And I remember stuffing voter things for him. He was being up for re-election.
Oh, yeah.
And the next day he voted against my project. I couldn't believe it. But
you never know.
We had a lot of characters, and then Buford Kreitz.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about him.
He started my arch enemy. Told me over his dead body how to get any of my stuff done, or the reserve project done, and then we eventually became really good friends.
Yeah, he was real involved in the Friends, right? Friends of the.
Yeah, he was on the board, my board, and so Buford and him and Ron. Who went on to become the supervisor? Roy Wilson. Roy was kind of the one of the original people. I remember being in the old Palm Desert City Hall. And there used to be a really neat guy. He was a Filipino guy. He was kind of artistic. He was designing the logo, and that was really early on. I'm trying to think some of the other characters.
You do have some good memories. Wow.
Yeah, you do. I watched the cities change. And initially, you'd go to get a project done, and you'd work with the staff, and the cities would operate like a corporation would, where you have a management team that runs everything, and then they bring it to a vote. Yeah. All the city councils now, they want to be totally involved in everything. But it's fascinating to have as many city councils as we have in the area. But you got to realize you were maybe you were president of your company, or you were a vice president of Macy's or something. Right. Now you're a councilman. Yeah. And you're meeting the premier of Japan at the airport and bringing him to your city. I mean, they get exposed to the top, the presidents, and it's been crazy.
Yeah. So what's your best life advice?
Oh, I think we talked later. I said, don't burn a bridge.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Think twice before you send a nasty email. And which reminds me, when I was in the war in Vietnam, you would communicate with your let's say your wife, and it would take 7 days to get a letter to her. And then 7 days later, you get a letter back from her, and she'd say, like, I went to this terrific party, had the best time. And then she'd sign off. And then you write a nasty letter, what are you doing going to a party? I'm here in Vietnam. And then a week later, she said, by the way, did I tell you that was your mother's birthday I was at? Mail is so critical. And when I was over there, I have like 5 sisters, and they were really good. I would pick out certain guys, the 20 or so college graduates I had working for me. And I know 2 guys, they aren't getting anything from home, they're getting nothing. And I would assign those guys to one of my sisters, and they fall in love with my sister. And they wrote letters, and it got so that mail was so critical that it was so important mail, rock and roll music, whatever, anything from home, a care package from home, or you could make a pizza or something was so big. And so to this day, I can't stand it. If I see the mail sitting in the mailroom, I want that mail on my desk, It's just a habit I got from that. And I've talked to a lot of people that it was like that. And anyway,
I know what you mean. Well,
funny story. But that communication gap, now I think they get them on a cell phone or satellite phone, or they can talk, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But my advice to the world, like I say, don't burn bridges, think twice, and I guess you got to think positive. It's a tough world. There's always a lot of.
Do you think we're in for some interesting times or some difficult times? Or
do I remember?
Do you think at this point we're in for some interesting times or difficult times? How would you describe, what's going on in the world today?
Well, one, we're going to know about more. There may not even be more difficult times. We just know more about them.
That's
we
true.
know an hour after they happen. I mean, how much? Just driving out here, I learned about the whole massacre in Maine.
I know.
I had a home like 40 miles from there.
Where, Camden?
And I was in Ellsworth, which is just.
I know Ellsworth.
Ellsworth, yeah. And
Did you?
and the big lake there, Branch Lake. I had a big home on the lake there. And so we used to go through Litchfield, I think, to go. I can't remember. You drove through there. It's one of the ways to get back when you're going to Boston or something. And so, but we know everything about it. We know what his name is, how much time he is in the Army and everything. And there's just so much, everything you pick up. If you could separate the, I wish there was a news media that did did no bad. It just had a page that you had to, if you had to open the back page, that's where the bad news was.
Yeah.
And everything else was positive.
It's
So
true.
I think it's got to be hard as young people growing up
Yeah.
and I worry for my grandson and whatever of what their life's going to be like.
I know it.
And when you just know that we are, I guess we are animals, right? And there's still, look at the war where the Ukraine, the Gaza deal. It's like,
Yeah.
they're doing some better. I watch a lot of sports, and so in the sports side, they do better things than going back into people's lives and understanding.
Yeah.
Why they were, their dad left when they were 4, and mom raised them, and they didn't have anything. So these kids that grew up so poor, and suddenly you're given millions of dollars, and you say, well, how stupid to buy jewelry and all these cars, but they've been love starved. And they have a situation now they're worried about where we talk about consumption, okay? So the wealthy, and we're wealthy people, we live here in Indian Wells, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We consume so much product as a percentage over, and everything we use over anybody in the third world countries.
Yeah.
And so we're always out telling everybody, form a democracy and you'll all be like the United States, right? Well, there isn't enough commodities around. And so, but now, a kid in South Africa he maybe heard about California once in his life, he can push a button and find out what's happening in downtown LA. You know what I mean? They now know,
amazing.
and they see all the stuff they don't have. So
Is that good or bad?
it's bad. Yeah, I think there'll be. You can only get the have and have not so far apart.
I know.
It's an attitude. So anyway, the media is affected. I think the kids are so electronically, they're not verbalizing enough, communicating enough. But there's always been change. It's no 2 years have been different.
You're right. It'll be different.
And we adopt, and I go through the sports things now where kids get a trophy for everything they do, and everybody's a winner, and it's taken a little bit out of it. And you look up, and they're protecting people. Well, we all got a little bit bullied, but we all were smart enough to not be in the same yard as that bully. There's some smarts in growing up that you got to do that.
That is so
there's
right.
a little bit of overprotectiveness, but then again, there are some people that are just cruel. But I think they're doing a better job of getting it out there that being a bully is not a good thing.
The information's available.
Yeah.
You just have to find it.
Yeah.
And what project are you working on right now?
We have a 500 lot subdivision up in Oregon, in Bend, Oregon. at a master plan resort we've had for 25 years called Sun River, called Caldera Spring. So I kind of oversee the creative end and pricing and develop, design direction and phasing and stuff up there. So I oversee that and involved in calls every week on that. And then we have our Terranea project in Rancho Palos Verdes, which is it's on 110 acres, and it's the site of the former Marine World, where Shamu the killer whale was and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it got shut down. It was shut down for 10 years. And then we acquired it, and we now have a 400-room hotel and 82 luxury condominiums and a 9-hole golf course, all oceanfront, just drop dead gorgeous. In fact, it's the closest place to Catalina Island. So when they swim the channel, they come to Terranea. That's where they want to land. So they swim the least amount of distance. I think it's 18 and a half miles. And then the two other active developments I'm doing, and we're working on a 900-acre project in Cabo, south of Todos Santos.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a 5-star project, we hope, and beautiful Crescent Bay Beach, and some incredible palm tree groves to save, and lagoons, and it'd be a special project. And then finally, we're out here looking at doing a residence club next to the new Tommy Bahama Hotel. We just converted, and we're having actually a celebration tonight, the grand opening of it.
What's it going to be called?
Well, the hotel is the Tommy Bahama Miramani Hotel, and right now it's just the Tommy Bahama Residences will be
I see.
the property next door. And it's intended to be a really very, very, very high-end condominium resort lifestyle clubhouse. We'll have a nice little restaurant that complements the new restaurant at Miramani next door, and beautiful fitness and beautiful pools, and it's bordered on two sides by the Indian Wells Golf Course, as you know. So that's mostly what I'm doing.